In the heart of New Orleans, where the soulful echoes of jazz blend with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and warm beignets, the early morning chill had barely begun to loosen its grip on the city. A grand restaurant, known as the Magnolia Parlour, stood as an oasis of refined elegance amid the urban hustle. Its polished mahogany accents and shimmering chandeliers promised an experience of luxury and comfort to those who entered. Yet on this brisk morning, an unexpected drama was unfolding within its hallowed halls. Before we dive deeper into this tale, we'd love to hear from you. Let us know where you're tuning in from, and if stories like this resonate with you, consider subscribing to our channel. Tomorrow, we have another special narrative waiting just for you. Elliot, a dignified 78-year-old war veteran with a lifetime of quiet heroism etched into the lines of his weathered face, pushed open the ornate glass doors with a sense of calm determination. His modest attire, a simple jacket and worn trousers, belied the inner strength and storied past that he carried with him. All he desired was a humble cup of hot coffee, a small comfort to ward off the biting cold that had followed him from the streets of his everyday life. As Elliot stepped into the softly lit dining area, the polished marble floors and delicate clinks of fine china created an atmosphere that seemed worlds apart from his own modest existence. The room was filled with well-dressed patrons engaged in light-hearted conversation, their laughter mingling with the soft strains of a piano solo playing in the background. Yet, as he made his way to an isolated table tucked away in a quiet corner, the warmth of the establishment was marred by an undercurrent of disdain. No sooner had Elliot settled into his chair than Bradford, the restaurant's impeccably dressed manager with an air of haughty superiority, swept into view. Bradford's smile was as practiced and false as the glimmer of gold on his cufflinks. With slow, measured steps that suggested he was sizing up every detail of his domain, Bradford approached Elliot as though the veteran's presence was an unwelcome intrusion into his carefully curated realm of refinement. "Good morning," Bradford began, his voice dripping with a patronizing sweetness that barely concealed his scorn. "Are you quite certain you're in the right place today?" Elliot's response was quiet but firm. "I only wish for a cup of coffee to warm me," he said, his tone polite yet resolute. The words carried the weight of a man who had seen too much to allow a petty insult to shake him, even if it pricked the edges of his pride. Bradford's eyes narrowed imperceptibly as he looked Elliot up and down, his expression one of thinly veiled disapproval. "A cup of coffee?" he echoed, his laugh short and dismissive. "This establishment is not merely a place for coffee, it is a venue for a complete dining experience. I'm afraid your taste does not quite align with our standards." The murmurs of nearby patrons faltered as the exchange grew in intensity. It was as though the elegant hush of the restaurant was a stage upon which an unseen drama was about to crescendo. Elliot's heart pounded steadily, not with anger, but with a deep, abiding sadness, a sadness born of years of service and sacrifice, now compounded by the sting of discrimination. He maintained his composure, eyes fixed on Bradford, as if daring him to degrade him further. "Sir," Elliot replied, his voice low yet imbued with an inner strength that resonated far beyond his simple request, "I serve my country with honor, and I deserve to be treated with respect. All I seek is a moment of warmth, a small comfort, nothing more." Bradford's sneer deepened, and he motioned subtly to two uniformed security guards who had been stationed near the entrance. "I'm afraid you've overstayed your welcome," Bradford said coolly. "Please, allow us to escort you out. We wouldn't want to disturb the ambience for our other guests." As the security guards advanced, their faces masks of professional indifference, Elliot rose slowly from his seat. His measured steps betrayed not fear, but a profound resignation and acknowledgement that the world was often unkind to those who had given so much. Yet, even as he began to move toward the exit, a murmur of discontent rippled through the room. From the dim recesses of a secluded booth in the far corner, a solitary figure had been silently observing the unfolding scene. The figure's eyes, hidden behind a brimmed hat and dark sunglasses, glittered with quiet determination. In that charged moment, as if the universe had conspired to intercede on behalf of dignity, the mysterious onlooker rose gracefully. With a deliberate flourish, the hat was removed and the sunglasses slid off, revealing none other than Keanu Reeves, the internationally renowned actor whose calm demeanor and magnetic presence could command the attention of even the most disaffected crowd. Keanu's voice, measured and resonant, cut through the tension like a clarion call. "Hold on," he said firmly, striding purposefully toward Elliot and the advancing security. "No one is to lay a hand on him." His words carried the unmistakable authority of someone who had faced adversity in his own life and knew that respect was not something to be given lightly. Bradford's confident veneer faltered under the unwavering gaze of Keanu Reeves. "Mr. Reeves," Bradford stuttered, attempting to recover his composure, I wasn't aware you were here. I merely..." Keanu held up a hand, silencing Bradford's feeble justifications. "It appears, sir, that your definition of hospitality is rather narrow. How can you justify treating a man, a war veteran who gave his all for this country, with such contempt all because he simply wanted a cup of coffee?" A hush fell over the restaurant as the guests shifted in their seats, suddenly aware of the moral gravity of the situation. Bradford's eyes darted around, desperately seeking support from his clientele, only to find a sea of disapproving faces. The atmosphere, once filled with casual indulgence, was now heavy with collective indignation. Elliot, his eyes glistening with unshed tears yet his voice steady, addressed Bradford in a soft, measured tone. "I never asked for extravagance. I never claimed to belong to the refined circles you seem to hold dear. I ask only to be seen as a human being, a person who has borne the weight of sacrifice and deserves to be treated with dignity." The words struck a chord in the hearts of many. In that moment, the once indifferent patrons transformed into a chorus of empathy. Whispers of agreement rippled through the room, punctuated by hesitant claps that soon swelled into full-throated applause. Even the security guards, caught in the moral crossfire, exchanged uncertain glances as they slowly lowered their hands. Bradford's face contorted with a mixture of embarrassment and fury. "This isn't about your service, sir," he insisted, his tone unconvincing as he tried to reassert control. "This establishment maintains certain standards, and I must enforce them." Keanu Reeves stepped closer, his presence both gentle and commanding. "Standards? Is it truly a standard to belittle a man who has fought for our freedom? Perhaps you should reconsider your definition of standards, one that values character over appearances." His remark, laced with a wry, almost humorous twist reminiscent of a seasoned comedian on a late-night talk show, resonated with the cultural sensibilities of every American in the room. "After all," he added with a subtle smile, "this isn't exactly a casting call for the next big Hollywood blockbuster." Bradford's composure shattered like fragile glass under the force of Keanu's unwavering gaze and the unified sentiment of the room. I didn't know," he murmured, his voice barely audible. "I truly didn't know." The silence that followed was profound, a silence filled with the unsaid acknowledgement of a shared responsibility to treat every human being with respect. It was as if the very soul of the restaurant had been awakened, its patrons now united in the belief that dignity was not a privilege to be bestowed upon the few, but a right to be upheld for all. Keanu then turned his attention to Elliot, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "You're not going anywhere," he said softly, yet firmly. "Today, we're going to sit together and enjoy the best coffee this city has to offer. And believe me, it will be on me." Elliot's eyes, full of a mix of gratitude and quiet humility, shimmered with unsaid thanks. "Thank you, Mr. Reeves," he replied, his voice trembling with emotion yet imbued with the strength of a lifetime of endurance. "I've seen many things in my years, a good many battles and far too many moments of unkindness, but today, you've reminded me that dignity and respect can still be found in the most unexpected places." As if on cue, the restaurant's staff, now emboldened by the display of solidarity, sprang into action. A waiter, his face alight with newfound purpose, hurried over to their table. "Two of our finest coffees, please," Keanu requested with an air of determined grace. The simple order, repeated like a mantra of unity, carried with it the promise of a fresh start, a reminder that sometimes, a small act of kindness can ripple out to change the hearts of many. Over steaming cups of coffee, Elliot and Keanu settled into a conversation that wove together threads of personal history, shared values, and the unyielding hope for a better future. Elliot recounted tales of his days in service, of nights spent under starlit skies in foreign lands, and of the deep scars both visible and hidden that such sacrifices often left behind. His voice, at times husky with emotion, told a story not just of war, but of the quiet battles fought in everyday life. He spoke of a time when honor was not a badge but a way of being, when every moment carried the weight of responsibility, and when the simplest acts of kindness were worth more than any medal. Keanu listened intently, his eyes never leaving Elliot's face. "You know," he mused, a spark of gentle humor dancing in his tone, "there's something inherently American about a man who has weathered the storms of life with nothing more than courage and a heart full of hope. It reminds me of those classic American heroes in old films, rough around the edges, sure, but with a soul as deep as the Mississippi. And let me tell you, that kind of soul can't be measured by appearances or by the cover of a fancy restaurant menu." The conversation flowed like the smooth strains of a blues guitar, alternating between poignant memories and light-hearted repartee. Keanu's interjections, sprinkled with cultural references to baseball legends, classic diners, and even the occasional nod to the eccentricities of Hollywood, added a layer of warmth that resonated deeply with everyone present. The patrons, who had once been mere spectators to a public shaming, now found themselves drawn into an intimate tapestry of shared experience and mutual respect. Meanwhile, Bradford, now a figure of diminishing authority, retreated into the background. His earlier attempts to enforce a rigid sense of decorum had backfired spectacularly, leaving him to confront the realization that his actions had not only humiliated a man of honor but had also tarnished the reputation of his establishment. With a heavy heart and a mind swirling with regret, Bradford approached Elliot later, his voice subdued. "I owe you an apology," he said, his eyes downcast. "I acted inappropriately, and I am truly sorry for the way I treated you." Elliot regarded Bradford with a measured calm. "I accept your apology," he replied quietly, "but let it be a lesson that no one should ever have to beg for basic human decency." His words, though soft, carried a resounding authority, a reminder that respect is not something to be granted by those in power, but a right inherent to every individual. The transformation of the Magnolia Parlour that day was palpable. The incident, captured on video by Keanu Reeves on his phone, spread quickly through social media, igniting conversations across the nation. In coffee shops from New York to Los Angeles, on living room televisions and bustling street corners, people discussed the courage it took to stand up against prejudice and the simple truth that respect should be the only rule governing our interactions. As the morning unfolded into a day filled with genuine smiles and heartfelt exchanges, Elliot found himself at the center of a movement, a symbol of resilience, dignity, and the quiet power of standing up for what is right. Strangers approached him with warm handshakes, some even offering to share their stories of similar injustices and moments when a stranger's kindness had made all the difference. For a brief time, the restaurant was transformed into a microcosm of hope and unity, where every clink of a coffee cup and every shared glance was a testament to the enduring spirit of humanity. Keanu Reeves, still seated beside Elliot, turned to the gathered crowd and said, "Today, let us remember that respect isn't something we ask for, it's something we demand for each other. Let us keep this spirit alive in our homes, on our streets, and in every corner of this great country." His words, resonating with the earnest cadence of a seasoned storyteller, were met with resounding applause and nods of agreement from every corner of the room. Later that day, as the soft glow of the afternoon sun filtered through the tall windows of the Magnolia Parlour, Elliot reflected on the events of the morning. The memory of the cold, unfeeling glances, the patronizing sneers, and the weight of years spent in silent struggle had all been transformed by a simple act of kindness and an unwavering commitment to do what was right. In that transformation, Elliot saw not only the possibility of redemption for a single man but the promise of change for an entire society, a society that, at its best, recognized that every individual, regardless of their background or appearance, deserved to be treated with honor and empathy. For Elliot, the day was a reminder that even in the midst of personal hardship, hope could be kindled by the warmth of a stranger's gesture. And as he sipped his coffee, a brew rich with the flavors of roasted beans and the promise of a new beginning, he allowed himself to smile at the thought that perhaps, just perhaps, the world was inching ever so slowly toward a more compassionate future. In the weeks that followed, the story of Elliot and Keanu's intervention became a beacon for those who had ever felt marginalized or dismissed. It was shared in community centers, discussed in local news segments, and even referenced in late-night talk shows, where comedians wove humorous yet incisive observations about the absurdity of societal prejudices. The image of a war veteran, dignified and unbowed, standing shoulder to shoulder with one of Hollywood's most beloved figures, became a powerful symbol of what it meant to honor one another in a country built on the ideals of freedom and mutual respect. The Magnolia Parlour, once a stage for quiet snobbery, now proudly displayed a framed photograph capturing that defining moment, a moment when courage and compassion triumphed over arrogance and exclusion. And every time a patron ordered a cup of coffee, they were reminded of the day when respect was redefined, when a man who had given everything for his country was finally recognized for the quiet dignity he possessed. As for Elliot, he continued to live his modest life with a renewed sense of purpose. He often recounted his experiences to anyone who would listen, stories of battles fought both abroad and at home, of moments when the smallest acts of kindness had the power to heal deep wounds. His narrative, enriched by the newfound respect of an entire community, served as a constant reminder that even in the face of overwhelming odds, every person had the right to be seen, heard, and valued. In a country that sometimes seemed obsessed with appearances and superficial standards, Elliot's story and the support he received from unexpected quarters became a rallying cry for change. It echoed in the soulful music drifting from the streets of New Orleans, in the fervent debates on community radio, and in the everyday conversations of people determined to build a more inclusive society. And so, in the annals of that vibrant city, the tale of one cold morning at the Magnolia Parlour would be remembered not as a story of humiliation, but as a testament to the power of empathy, courage, and the unyielding belief that every human being deserves to be treated with respect. A simple cup of coffee had sparked a revolution of the heart, a revolution that, like the enduring spirit of America itself, would continue to inspire generations to come. As dusk fell over New Orleans and the city's lights began to twinkle like stars come down to earth, the legacy of that day lingered in every conversation, every shared smile, and every act of kindness that followed. It was a legacy that reminded all who encountered it that while life's challenges may be many, the simple act of standing up for one another could create ripples of hope, transforming even the coldest mornings into moments of lasting warmth and profound connection. In the end, the lesson was clear: respect is not a commodity to be bought or given, it is the very essence of our shared humanity. And if one man's quiet courage could ignite a spark that set a whole community ablaze with compassion, then perhaps, just perhaps, the future held the promise of a world where every person, regardless of their station in life, could savor the warmth of a cup of coffee and the enduring comfort of dignity well deserved. So, next time you find yourself in a bustling cafe or an elegant restaurant, take a moment to look around. Notice the faces, the stories hidden in every smile and every line of age. Remember Elliot's journey, a journey marked by sacrifice, quiet resilience, and the unwavering belief that even in the midst of life's harshest winters, there is always the promise of a new dawn filled with hope, compassion, and the simple, unadorned joy of being truly seen.